I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. It is an unseasonably steamy day here in New York City. It's summery even. Andrew Quo, have you broken out the Knicks shorts already?
New York City is going nuts, man. Not only have I broken out the Wallies, the shorts, the Rick Brunson throwback. It's beautiful out. It's like balmy today. The New York Art Book Fair just happened. The Knicks are rolling. The New York Rangers are rolling. James Dolan rules this neighborhood. It stretches as far as Philadelphia.
I went out to grab an iced coffee this morning. There's Marmadukes all over the park. You know, already the sun beaming in. My ACs are not in the window. It's getting that summery hot indoor vibe.
Yep.
Where it's like, how do you describe it? Everything starts getting a little like more fragrant, a little funkier, a little more stuffy when that sun is beaming in and the AC isn't on.
It's like
that's kind of the art book fair.
Well, when you pop open a cooler for the first time and there hasn't been ice in it for a while, and there's a certain fragrance that wafts out into your face, and that is a bunch of nerds making zines. Pronounced zine.
But yeah, the sun just like flowing in this morning. I'm like, ooh, it's giving me that thing where you come back from vacation in the summer, or you leave for the day and your AC's been off, and you come in like, ooh, this sucks.
Yeah,
I'm getting that right now.
I hate it. Like I went outside to see the weather today with my cup of tea, and it's too soon. I like it crisp. I'm a crisp morning kind of like warm 4 p.m. kind of bro, and that's when I eat dinner because I live in Del Boquo Vista.
Yeah, I think today's gonna get to 83, which is nice. Can you do the Celsius?
What?
The Celsius Fahrenheit conversion? Do you have a quick and dirty method?
Nope. I don't use Celsius because I'm American. These colors don't run, Ben.
We don't need to talk about weather any longer, but I will say there is a pretty easy conversion. It's not exact, but it's fairly close. And I'm going to try to remember it. I believe that if you're going from Celsius to Fahrenheit, it's doubling it and adding 30. So if it was 20 Celsius, that would be 40, and then you add 30, and that becomes 70. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But for a little while there, I was very quick at converting back and forth. And then I stopped caring.
Well, yeah, why would you need to know the Celsius temperature?
As a trader, I have friends from other countries.
You're like, guess what temperature is in Celsius in New York?
No, there would be these moments of confusion. It's like, it's 20. I'm like, I don't know what that means. And I'd say it's 70. And we were just at a real Mexican standoff until I learned the quick and dirty conversion.
Can you say the M-bomb standoff anymore? Just asking questions. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
I think so.
What does it imply? Just like a cowboy-ish guns and stuff? Is it like a movie reference? Or is this like the Alamo? Is this the San Antonio Spurs? Are we talking about Tony Parker?
Okay, I'm researching it because I don't want to be offensive to anyone, even though I don't agree with researching mid-show. A stalemate or impasse, a confrontation that neither side can win. The expression is sometimes perceived as insulting to Mexicans. So I apologize to anyone who was insulted by that.
We need to throw the M-bomb into the...
Yeah. I just thought it was a stalemate, a standoff, a confrontation that neither side can win. I apologize to all of the Mexicans who may have been offended by its usage in that situation.
Looks like we have a new slur declaring for the slur draft. Is it going to be a top 5 slur? I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we're really at an Albanian standoff at this point.
Wow, it's a really Taiwanese tussle over here. So you alluded to it.
Are you talking about Lebanese loggerheads?
Oh, this is a Lower East Side Lucy over here.
I like loggerheads though. That's a good one.
Loggerheads. I just
And I'm
think
not
of
talking about-
Bostonians.
And I'm not talking about people who drink and beer.
Right, right. You talking about loggers like Ichiro stuff, Seattle, Portland, Dame Lillard. You calling the Bucks loggerheads?
Loggerheads.
So you went to the art book fair. Tell me.
Yeah, so apparently it was a real hootenanny to get in.
Well, it's
I don't
small.
know what sort of I don't know what sort of ethnic standoff it was, but people just were lined up, I guess, all the way down the block. I saw your boy Jerry Saltz said, I guess I'm not going this year. The line's too long, which clearly meant that he was trying to flex and thought that he should have been able to skip the line, and they were like, no.
He deserves that flex.
Yeah,
He's a god.
I'm not knocking it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he seemed a little resentful that there was a long line, or at least that he had to wait in it. But I knew friends who were there on the early side, and they were like, yeah, it was havoc. I got there around 6, and it started to sprinkle a little bit. So their outdoor block party, as they called it, was more or less disbanded. I just walked right in. You know, you paid your $5 and you went in, but there was only an hour left, so I did not get the full experience because I came there late. And yet, I still think I had a well-rounded experience there. As in, I understand how it goes.
And just to give some background, it was on 22nd Street at the old Dia space that I believe Hauser and Wirth was in for a second before they built their building. It's a precarious building. It's extremely vertical, and the steps are extremely steep and prominent. So I understand why they kept capacity low, because if everyone just rushes in, it's like a kind of a disaster, not for safety, but just for bottlenecking and like usability. It's a weird building.
Yeah, the steps are steep, and there is an inherent danger in that, but they're also, the staircases themselves are very narrow, and really it's single file passing each other.
Yep. And people struggling. You're not chatting and walking down those steps. You're kind of like, I'll talk to you when we get down, and people just file down kind of. It is, I loved PS1. I thought that was a great venue. There was an open courtyard. There was music. There was, I don't know. It was fun. Wider steps. Bigger staircases. Bathrooms everywhere.
I liked it at PS1 because it was a reason to go to Queens every now and then.
There's good ramen near there.
But just we're going to Queens for this. Heading to Chelsea and the Gallery District, it doesn't really have that same cachet. But I thought it was, as always, a very wholesome experience. It's good vibes. It's positive. Everyone always talks about the smell, and it's a little bit like, as mentioned, when you walk in after you've been gone for a week and the sun's been beaming through your windows, and you're like, everything here is a little bit funky.
Well, a lot of these books, there's paper mold everywhere, especially with some of these vintage books, some of these materials everyone uses to make these zines. I always have a conflict. I used to be like a really devoted kind of participator in this fair. We had booths every once in a while. We sold a bunch of shirts. We've had books. We tried to do a bar in the Armory. We got shut down right away. Our buddy John Rippenhoff brewed like a concoction from Milwaukee, sent over some mini kegs, and we were serving free beers with Marlboro. And the caterers got wind of it and immediately shut us down maybe 5 minutes into it, because there's money to be made, and we did not ask anyone permission. But there's a certain disorder that I developed that I kind of got rid of, but the obsession with books and zines can like grip you like no other thing. It's wild. I have some friends that went into therapy for it.
Tell us more.
It's like there's a whole system, and it's not unlike people who get really obsessed with collecting vintage clothing or sneakers or records. But there's this thing about making books that if you have the right personality trait, it grips you in a way that I found it personally in my early 20s, just like all consuming, because every book was a bridge to another book, and every book I was like, well, I can silkscreen that, I can letterpress that, well, I use a different material. And it just consumed so much of my time, sort of like video games, that when I was done with the book, I was like, oh, I just don't care that book is over. I'm going to move on to Super Mario's 9, you know?
So this is really not about collecting books that other people make. It was, in your situation, making the zines.
Yes. Yeah, I would buy zines for research, be like, ooh, this stitching is amazing. I need to buy this so I can copy it or do something else to what they did. It was incredibly crippling. Like, I have boxes and boxes of zines that I've collected, like, from all over the world, just sitting in my basement, and I would not give them away or share them or like trade them away or sell them. But it is kind of a real thing. I talked to other people about it. A couple of people I talked to were just like, I got a divorce, I had to go into therapy, because like it was just like, well, what are you doing? It's like, well, I'm just thinking about the book fair, and what books I'm gonna have this year and then next year. Well, next year rolls around, and 12 months between book fairs is not a long time for making books.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I've never had that particular bookmaking bug. For me, it was the joy of basketball, and that was it. But yeah,
yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, the art book fair is the same every year. I like it. I go over there almost as a social component. I like seeing what people are making and wandering around and running into people. And also the timing is usually spring or fall, and there's a nice seasonal element to it there.
It is if I had a Twitter hot take, that thing that they made decades ago when it first started getting good is kind of the most influential. I think I've said this on this pod. It's the most influential thing within this scene that I can imagine over any museum show, gallery, magazine. This thing, like high, low, big, small, it just like got people's attention. And if you were thinking about am I an artist? Am I a writer? Am I a photographer? It's like, yeah, make a zine and you become all these things. It was like aspirational, but also like what I said before, like it can grip you in a way. The originators of this thing, like Shannon Michael Caine, rest in peace, and our buddy Jason Pollan was involved a lot. Like Max Schumann left Printed Matter recently. The original heads are gone, but I remember doing booths and it was fun as hell. There was a real community there that is like very intense, man. It's just like, it's a tight community there and it's cool, but I can no longer go because it triggers like this weird like furriness in me, as you can tell.
Yeah, I can see this. I'm sensing that.
Yeah.
For you, you're more into trying to get reservations at expensive restaurants at this point. That's something, your new hobby is Resi. You play it like a video game. You're just constantly trying to get table of 8 at Carbone Friday night, bada boom, bada bing. Quo is there. That's kind of like replaced the art book fair in your world.
Listen, I'm not into supporting Big Ragu, Big Barilla. It's just, I want to go to the mom and pop shops. And if there's somebody who's like obsessed with books, addicted to making zines, and they want to switch it up and say, I'm going to be the middleman and sell reservations for these mom and pop restaurants for a fee that I will present to a bidder, at the highest bidder, they can have it. And maybe I'll make 70, 80 grand a year. And maybe the New Yorker magazine will write about it. So what?
So yes, as you so elegantly got around to, we are referring to a New Yorker story called Why You Can't Get a Restaurant Reservation, how bots, mercenaries, and table scalpers have turned the restaurant reservation system inside out. Most of this is about Resi, the reservation app. There are other ones like that, or other ones that are, you go directly through the site. But
Open Table, maybe?
Yeah, I think Resi is now sort of the big dog in that. I think it's also owned by someone from Eater. I could be wrong, or something like that. But anyway, it's about the difficulty with getting a reservation, but the people who have acted as middlemen, who are always my favorite intermediaries, and how they are scalping these reservations by grabbing them online and then becoming brokers for them, almost like their sporting events. It's like, oh, you want to go to Lilia on a Wednesday night? That's $100, and that's what this article talks about.
I mean, this is a tradition that goes way back in front of Madison Square Garden, in front of a Fish concert. Even Shake Shack had people originally, when they were in the park, like selling spots online. Maybe the art book fair should think about that. I wish we waited for this conversation before the basketball segment, because this is kind of a Wells Fargo discussion as well. I mean, tickets being in the open market, like an eBay thing, just like a to the highest bidder, an auction, makes sense. I was kind of more interested in the aspect of like, there's certain brokers of these reservations that are more powerful than others. You mentioned like Lilia, or like Teresi is a hot one, I'm sure, and I'm sure they're only holding one or two a night at most. So these are really finite, valuable things. No one's like busting their chops to get like a spot in line at Scars. You just wait there, like you can do it. But there's only a few hot tables, so they kind of become premium. And I'm like, only 70 or 80K a year? Because we know people in the biz, many people, who like will do this on the low for their friends or clients. And especially with Knicks season tickets. And at the end of the year, you don't pay them up front. You take the reservation, you take the season tickets, you say thank you. And then you pick a time of year, usually at New Year's or Christmas, and you give them a gift or bonus to say thank you. That is something I learned from homies. But there's a whole process to this, and just people are so rich. This article is kind of weird to me because it doesn't really underline the main story, which is like paying $200 for a 9 p.m. table at Teresi is like nothing for a lot of people.
Right. And I think one talked about the most that they'd ever made, and it was something like $1,000 for an 8-seater at Carbone. I'm like, well, those people are going in there. They're going to blow 10 bands. Like,
remember
$1,000 to whoever's going to do that isn't a big deal.
It's
just, if there was, these people aren't creating the market was there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I remember that one time me, you, and Pablo had dinner at Raul's, and we went to get a drink next door. A-Rod was holding court with like 8 blonde women in a booth, and I'm like, I'm sure he had to pay someone $1,000 for that booth, right? Like, he's not like, oh, I'll do a reservation a month in advance.
It's different in maybe A-Rod's situation too, because he might have spent so much money over the years at Blue Ribbon and is so well known that he just puts in a heads up, and they're like, ooh, clear it out.
No doubt.
Because he's gonna spend that money. He like, they don't need an intermediary for A-Rod because his money is going directly to the restaurant.
Yeah, for sure. And if it's A-Rod, it's different. If it was me wearing Wallabies and Knicks shorts, they'd be like, who are you? I'm like, I am not this person that made this reservation online, but here I am, you know. But as we know as well, a lot of these restaurants know about this and will hold tables for A-Rods and for maybe yourself, not me, but like they don't give out all the reservations online because you want to keep like the good stuff for people who you want there. Who's sitting in your good seats matters, right, for a restaurant?
Of course. I mean, I know there was one of my friends worked at Coffee Shop way back in the day, and this is not exclusive to Coffee Shop at all, but that was a very prominent restaurant in around Union Square. People were there late. It was kind of a place to see and be seen for a moment. And she said specifically, when someone would come in, like if they're attractive, you put them in this section. If they're unattractive, you put them in this section. It's like high visibility area, attractive people go there. And that was just the
They're
rule
like-
for the entire place.
It's like, we gave you the best seat, the corner spot. And I'm like, I know I am not handsome. I've never been on a dating app, but I would not do well on that. I just want my lo mein. Thank you.
Here is your premium table right by the bathroom, sir. And and it's very secluded, if you notice. No one will see you here.
But it's like that chud mentality of like, New York is trash. There's migrants busting down store doors and stealing everything. It's like, do you think that these restaurants that you've heard about that are famous on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday are like easy to get into? Like that you can just go on Resi and get a seat to 11 Madison because you can afford a meal and it's your birthday? It's like, these are really finite resources that everyone wants. It's like a sports draft. It's like, I'll take Luka Doncic. It's like, yeah, someone else wants him before you do. It's like, what do you mean? Why can't I just get him? It's like, because there's other people with higher priority.
I would also say this is potentially tied to the crumbling of the models and bottles nightlife system, where that just isn't happening in the same way that it used to. And I've spoken with people who worked for like the most prominent big dogs in that models and bottles world. They were the ones running those clubs that defined that and were more or less like globally influential in creating that model in the States and then worldwide, whether it's New York, Vegas, LA, whatever.
Sure.
And they were saying that just doesn't work anymore. Even the financial bros or tourists who used to be sort of the backbone of that industry aren't into it because they can't get cool people there. Because that was always the dynamic. Right. They would get enough cool people and enough attractive people to convince the people who were neither to pay exorbitant amounts to be in that room. And they would kind of operate under the illusion that everyone was doing that there. So you'd see this table full of, models from Romania that looked like they were raised by wolves, and a few guys in fedoras, and the financial bros would say, hey, this place is cool. Let's spend $5,000 on bottles.
Yeah.
This system is breaking apart. So I know they're shifting to dinners and trying to do more like magic shows, trying to create more of this idea of
Jesus
which is
Christ.
crazy,
Paolo
right?
Banchero shows up. Jonathan Isaac, is that you?
Is that Dennis Scott?
Horace Grant, what?
But yeah, they're trying to do more like it's a dinner and then there's a magic show or just coming up with like cabaret, these ideas of doing things that are more than
horrible sounding. What
you're going to. Oh no, they're struggling to figure out what to do, and I think this is kind of what's happening. Instead of paying $1,000 to get a table somewhere, which then gives you the right to buy more things at that table.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, let's do that and we'll go to Carbone. That's actually the place to see and be seen. That's our version of Models and Bottles is Bucatini and Rigatone.
Yeah, the business model.
It's mortadella and bottles. Is that what we're looking for?
Mortadella and macaroni. We're not. There's no Riggies happening here. There's no R bombs. But the business model of those clubs when we were going out a lot to those clubs, Avenue's not even there. I walked by, that whole building's gone. It's like Inception. The memories not only change, sometimes they just disappear. It's like, was Avenue actually here? It's like Costanza.
Did I see Danilo Gallinari in here, or did that never even occur?
But the business model was crazy, right? Because on a medium night, you would have the Kardashians right next to the booth, and then you and Sevs on the opposite side. And then I would ask, like, the waiter, I'm like, how does this work? Because the Kardashians are not paying for anything. He said, correct. You see those guys in back of the Kardashians? We're making a whole night's money off of them. Like, one table is covering this entire night. And this is just like a Wednesday. So like on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, this gets more intense. But he's like, don't look for the famous people. Look for the rich people. And I'm like, oh, makes total sense, right? Hard to sustain.
I think I was there and was coming in at the same time as the Kardashians.
That
But
was
you've
an
also-
amazing scene.
But
Because
you've
go
also
ahead.
told this story
Yeah.
before, and I can't tell if it's an implanted memory.
I say this all the time because that was a weird. This is before they got famous, really famous.
I know, and
Yeah.
there were times when I was there, and I do remember this, but I can't remember if you've invented this story and then put it into my brain, and now it's one of my memories.
There was many witnesses. I was waiting to get in. I was not dressed well, but I had a bag full of my CDs because I was DJing, and the whole Kardashian clan, most of them, were standing there, and they let me and my crew in first because we had to work, and they were kind of annoyed. But this is like kind of like post Ray J, pre reality show, and one of the distinct memories I had was Kim Kardashian walking up and down the club looking for a friendly face and not finding any. And this is kind of when I asked like the bar back, being like, how does this work, man? She's not having a good time. It's like, yeah, I know. The table next to her is like, they're big spenders. Weird.
Still don't know if that was my memory or yours.
Yeah. I mean, shit. What do they call this phenomenon? The K bomb.
It's funny because a friend of mine, I've heard him tell a story a few times, like many times now, and I'm like, I know that's not your story. That's a story I told you that someone else told me.
Oh yes, I love this shit. This is kind of what I make my paintings about. But like, yeah, it's like, this is not to get super annoying, but this is like kind of what AI is trying to do, right? It's like aggregating everyone's like bits and pieces and then presenting it as a new idea. And it's like, you just kind of like took a little bit of Kardashian story here, took a little bit of a burrito story here, or you went to the art book fair, whatever. This is now my story. It's like, I swear it's a third me, but I'm not sure. It's like, well, it is a third you actually.
Yeah, a buddy has started using this story repeatedly as part of the origin mythology to our friendship. Mm-hmm. Like, when I first met Ben, like we went out and this happened.
It wasn't.
No.
Is it me? Okay.
No, it's not you.
I'm sitting right here.
When we first went out, this happened, and I'm like,
yeah.
that didn't happen. That was a story I told you that was
Yes.
a different friend's origin mythology.
Yeah. I mean, I have a friend who
I mean, it's lore. It's friendship lore. It's just a different friend and different lore.
I have a friend who will do that within one night of hanging out. I'll be like, I saw that red thing on the wall. An hour goes by and she'd be like, I saw that red thing on the wall. It's like, no, I said it. And she's like, no, I saw the red thing. It's incredible. I love it. It's fucked up. I know how the Wachowski brothers wrote The Matrix now.
I mean, a good one that I could not fight back on was, I was telling someone, I was like, well, remember when I named your kid? I'm like, no, you didn't. I'm like,
Fucking with people. Right.
I did, but if you don't want your child named by me, it's something that you need to accept for your
that's
friend
fucked
lore.
up. That's fucked up.
You absolutely came up with that name. It wasn't me at all. I just said, good idea. That's a great name. I definitely didn't suggest it. No.
I saw an interaction go down where someone was wearing like a vintage like Guns N' Roses tee or something back in the day of indie sleaze, and another one of my friends like, that's mine. I left that at your house. It's like, no. I bought this from a flea market. It's like, nope. I left it at your house when we hooked up. He's like, no. I bought this with money from my hands that came from my wallet. It's like, nope. We hooked up and I left it there and I've been looking for it and give it back to me. It was incredible.
That's friend lore right there.
Yeah.
I remember one time my dad said, I invented the word dweeb. It's like, no, you didn't, Dad.
God.
He's like, no, I did, actually. I coined it. Like,
It's incredible. You've touched on one of my favorite things, man. So wait, how did you dissuade him? Or did he actually invent the word dweeb?
don't know. I let him. I was a kid, and I was like, "Wow, my dad invented dweeb. That's crazy."
I have two examples of this that I love thinking about. One that's not that fun. One of my friends claims he invented the phrase "caught gramming" on Instagram, that hashtag, and he tried to monetize it. But I'm like, how are you gonna do this? He's like, well, every time someone uses it, being like, hey, that's my intellectual property. I'm like, how does that work? There's no money. what do you do? It's like, well, if they tag me every time they write that hashtag, then maybe I can get some sort of like deal with someone else. And I'm like, this is incredibly stupid. I love it. That's one example.
This sounds very litigious.
Yeah, this dude is always trying to get money. So like, he's like, me and my girlfriend came up with that, and girlfriend's like, we did. I'm like, I don't believe you did that by yourself. But another one of my friends, Leo Fitzpatrick, claims he invented the word stoops in kids. Do you believe Leo?
I've heard this claim before as well.
He loves telling people this, so it's not even blowing it out of. This is not private information. He's like, that was my word, and people started using the word stoops. I'm like, I have to believe you now.
It could be true though, because words start somewhere.
For sure. And he was like, I ad-libbed that in like the millions hours of footage that we did for kids. It ended up getting used, and people started saying that. And I was like, I have no origin story of Stoops, so now I have to believe you.
That's Stoops lore.
It's Stoops lore. Well, ever have a joke and then see like a stand-up comedian do the joke, and you're just like, oh, I've been like kind of doing that in bits like at bars for 10 years.
Well, I think we can talk about ethical basketball in regards to this.
That's right.
As everyone knows, we came up with that phrase first. That was us. And that's not just friend lore. That was the name of the website.
That's
it said,
on the
welcome
record.
to the home of ethical basketball for 10 years. And then now people say it as like shorthand for what we were using it for too. It's not even like fuckboy, where it was a word that people just started using totally differently. It's actually using it the same way.
Right.
It's talking about not going to the foul line. It's talking about not taking threes. It's talking about dunks and 2-pointers as being ethical. That's the whole joke.
It was the origin story was the criticism James Harden got when he was in Houston.
Yeah.
It was about
It was
Harden
literally
in
about
Houston.
James Harden. 100%.
Yeah. Oh man, one time I did Jeremy Lin scissor tee when he got traded to Houston, and someone slid into my DM. No, someone just mentioned DM'd me and was like, yo, I made this shirt before you. I don't appreciate you ripping me off, and I'd like to continue this conversation. And then I was like, oh, I feel so bad. Did I do this subconscious? To your point, like, did I see this and do it? I am so sorry. And I looked at it, and it was like 5 years after mine. And I was like, oh, wait, no. I did this about Jeremy Lin when he got traded to Houston. And then I showed him the post that I did at a printed matter book fair that I had released it at. That happened 5 years before his tee. And I'm like, that's Jeremy Lin. That's why he has his number. And this is a series of Jeremy Lin tees I've done. Here they are. So I'm sorry. And he was like, well, I have to believe you, but consider yourself on notice. I'm like, what the fuck? What the hell? I just let it go. Whatever. It wasn't worth fighting. But
I remember someone said something about one of the Beavis and Butthead tees too that we put out. And it was the same exact thing. Like, well, I did this. And I was like, well, actually, Andrew made these before. Like,
let's go back.
And they have Tyson Chandler on the Knicks on them. So
right. I mean, I did a Steve Novak one. They go back. But
yes, I guess it was Steve Novak, yeah.
I've done a Tyson one. There's been like dozens, but there's no IP here. The culture is kind of like overlap. So like I rejoice when people are like, yo, someone ripped off your tee. I'm like, can you take a picture? Can I see it? Can I buy one? Like, this is the whole culture of it. So when people break that kind of cycle, I'm just like, oh, you don't get what we're all doing here together. Like, we're borrowing pieces and like pushing it forward. Not unlike burrito evolution that has somehow stopped.
You brought this up earlier as a topic that you wanted to discuss.
I really do, man.
In our writer's room, all the interns were there with their increasingly small dollops of gruel as we were putting together the run of show. And you said,
at minute 34, you have to cut to burritos.
I mean, people don't understand
I know.
that this is a fascist program. I knew I had to get out of the etymology discussion at exactly 33.2. And boom, here we are. Burrito evolution. Andrew, what's on your mind?
You teased it with dropping the M bomb. But remember when burritos were a main character in like food lore? They were a main character. Maybe they were funny. People enjoyed them. There was like burrito culture, right? When did that end, man? People were doing like David Chang made like a Asian Momofuku burrito. People were innovating burritos. It's like, oh, this is like a fusion Korean burrito. This is a fusion Chinese burrito. This is a fusion like salad kind of healthy burrito. People stopped eating burritos. Is it? Why did that happen?
Sorry, I'm still just laughing at burrito as a main character because it's actually true.
I'm saying. It was yeah.
Well, there are certain people, and they may be ourselves at times, right? Who decide that a kind of food is part of their personality for a little while. And I'm not talking about, hey, I'm a chef or I run a restaurant. Just in conversation. And I had a little
Yep.
I had a little bit of that when we were talking about birria tacos. It's like, oh, I'm into this. I'm going to talk about burrito tacos. I'm gonna be the burrito guy for a little while.
You're the chicken riggy ranger.
Exactly, right? My whole personality is just one garbage plate. It's friend lore. But burritos were one of those things that you don't see anymore.
Yeah.
And it was a character trait. Oh, I'm into burritos. I love a good burrito.
Yeah, man.
I'm wondering what the vectors for its decline in popularity are, and I think there's several, Andrew. One, carb heavy.
True.
Beans, rice, flour tortilla, just carbs lost a little prominence. It doesn't mean it changed with, like, say, pizza, but burrito, I think, was a victim of that. I would say in New York, the rise of tacos, an immediate challenge, and one might call it a well, it'd be a phrase
no.
that you'd use for burritos versus tacos. Maybe an Italian an Italian crossroads, if you will. But yeah, the rise of taco culture and taco as a personality trait. I'm into tacos. I love tacos. I'm a taco guy. Taco Tuesdays. I think that supplanted the burrito as the Tex-Mex delicacy of choice.
Why can't there be two M-bomb characters? There's room for both, right? I mean, Challengers is 3. There should be a third. It should be taquitos or nachos, my favorite.
I think it's that the burrito is not quite authentic enough. It's more of a, well, it's way more Tex-Mex than it is actual Mexican. As a connoisseur of tacos, not myself, I'm not one, but as someone who really is into tacos, it's a little more authentic. Que authentico way.
Okay, I want to ask you this question. Does evolution hit its end with authenticity? Because remember, the Korean tacos were a thing. Roy Choi, right? The Gorilla truck here. Every one of these Tokyon magazine parties sponsored by Bud Select, featuring DJ Stretch Armstrong and Travis Scott, had a Korean taco truck out front.
Yep.
And did that evolve past fusion to its authentic form, which is like Los Tacos #1 now, which is like incredible, but like kind of authentic, right? Do we want authenticity at the end?
Yes, that's a good. You know, Andrew, sometimes you come up with these observations, and now I get it. You know why we're doing this
500 pods
for these gems that you, like a truffle pig.
It took 453 pods to get to this taco truth.
The truth is authenticity, storytelling.
I'm just a storyteller here.
Narrative.
Yeah.
That's what we're all searching for.
Because we go out for the weird and then always settle on the normal, right?
At the end of the day, Andrew, we just want real. We just want what's real.
I mean, who survives Teresi, right? Red sauce survives. David Chang has not survived. Yo, models and bottles have not survived. Spaghetti and red sauce wins. I have 16 jars of Rayo's tomato sauce in my cupboard right now. That's right.
The atomic units of everything comes down to hoarded bucatini and some marinara sauce.
Which is, it comes back to China, man. I hate to say it, but evolution just evolves towards China.
The birth of man.
That's right.
But yeah, I think you are right when it comes to tacos in that we never had really good ones in New York, at least according to most people who are experts on this, and I think they were right. Mm-hmm. So the novelties were the ones that people thought were fun because they were superior or at least more interesting than the available, like sort of third-rate ones that we had here. But once you started getting places like Ramirez Taco or Taco Number One, places that were legitimately really good, it's like, wait, we were eating kimchi tacos? What the fuck were we doing?
They were always so watery. Everyone had like kimchi juice dribbling down their arm, getting on their Guns N' Roses vintage tees. Like, it was a mess of a scene, man. But yo, what happened? What happened to Chipotle?
It's just like sobering up. What are we doing?
What were we doing? It's like, what are you doing?
I'm out here eating a Korean taco. It's not a thing. Those don't exist.
I'm going to a Nike event featuring 175 artists who are painting on shoelaces, and there's a Korean taco truck outside.
I'm eating a ramen burger. That's not food.
Yeah. Yo, what happened to Chipotle?
I don't know. Are they part of the burrito decline, or were they part of its rise?
It is like the Phoenix Suns. It is a failing franchise. It was like other main characters. It was a forefront of lunch options in the scene in New York, and they were growing as a corporation. The E. coli thing happened, but people can recover from that, maybe.
Well, they did.
Because yeah,
I remember they were getting hammered by all those E. coli stories, and then they seem to totally bounce back from it.
Or is there
maybe
a delay?
People are still I don't know. Like, as in now, the institutional thought of Chipotle is go there and get sick.
Maybe because remember Jack in the Box killed some people with E. coli, I believe. I'm sorry if they didn't, but people certainly got sick. 20 years later, I'm just like, don't eat at Jack in the Box, man. You're gonna die from the coli. But like Chipotle is notably making news for its declining sales.
I think it's just part of the decline of the burrito.
There you go.
That's what they sell, right? You can't say, their brand is trash. This other burrito place is crushing it. Yeah. Their product is not one that people want.
And attached to the burrito decline, or maybe the end of burrito evolution, did we reach the perfect burrito, or did we realize the endeavor was imperfect all along? I don't know. But we just come down to like sandwiches and Italian food, right? This is just like a sandwich, French, Italian world we live in.
I'm trying to attach the burrito to a larger social idea, a rise and fall of the way that we live our lives. And I'm not sure I can. The authenticity idea, I think, is tied to that. The dietary trends as well. Yeah. But I'm thinking about something else you said, that the sandwich is too big. And when I think of a burrito right now, I'm like, they're pretty good. I like them. Yep. They're tasty. It's also like, who needs to be freighted down by a 2-pound brick?
I know. And the tax of that, especially if you do it multiple times, if that was your identity, you're doing it 2 or 3 times a week at least, and putting it on social media and whatever. But then you can't take the selfies because you got the gobble neck, you got the chub on, the C-bomb, and I think the tax of eating burritos is too hefty for the common diner.
How would you describe that dynamic, that impasse between the burrito and the content creator? You know what I mean? There's like a phrase that we could use that would maybe respect the lineage of the burrito, but also indicate that they're at odds.
How does the burrito content creator eat its own tail? Is what you're asking? Like, is it a flawed premise to begin with? It's like, well, I'm a thirst trap. I staged riots after Knicks games, and I eat burritos. Like, you have your challengers right there, the three, right?
I mostly stick to eating cheese puffs at Union Square, and I think you'll note that I made that transition in topics at exactly 45 minutes in, as dictated by our draconian run of show.
The interns are like tapping their watches from behind bars with less gruel.
They are rattling their tin cups on the bars of their cages.
That's right. Did you see that shit? Some guy put up flyers being like, watch me eat a whole thing of cheese puffs, a container, a jar, like a Costco-sized container of cheese puffs. And people actually turned out for this. It was getting hate as much as that guy who was posting up signs being like, I want a girlfriend. It's just like, God damn it. How did you feel about Cheese Puff Gate?
I mean, look, if he wasn't with me at the levee, you know, I'm saying as a cheese puff day one, you were if you were really into that puff life, you were at the levee.
The finger is disgusting. It's a tough snack. You got to eat it with a spoon. Oh,
it creates fingers most foul.
Yeah. Those cups, man.
Absolutely vile. Just terrible. Well, it felt like a knockoff of the guy from Philly, right? Who did the same idea, where I put up signs everywhere and said, I'm going to eat my 40th rotisserie chicken daily in a row. Come by. And people came and cheered as he gorged on a rotisserie chicken, which of course is not any sort of spectacle at all, but the spectacle is a spectacle. And that's the same deal with Mr. Cheese Puffs. No one actually cares that someone's going to eat a container of cheese puffs. It's that we're going to watch a guy eat it is the whole appeal.
And he's wearing all pink. I like the rotisserie chicken guy. I thought there was like a degree of like sadness to that I found interesting. He's like, watch me decline into hopeless depression. I'm like, let's go. The cheese puff guy, this kind of content annoys me. And like, there was a kerfuffle about like, who's allowed to do cab driver content in New York? Is it the New York Times? Is it Kareem, our buddy Kareem? And I'm like, this debate is not what we've evolved past burritos, not this debate. I just think I hope we can see content that isn't what we actually want, but then when everyone turns out in Union Square, where apartments only cost like what, $700 for a single bedroom, and film this guy eating cheese puffs in this costume, I'm just like, we're just theater kids, aren't we?
Well, in a neighborhood where rent can be had for a song,
everyone just like hopped down from their 3-bedroom apartments with skylights, took a photo, and went right back up and enjoyed their day.
I was on my stoop in Union Square.
Yeah. I was on my balcony taking video of this man.
We were hanging out on the fire escape in the summer, as one does, to get a nice breeze from our tenements.
I'd rumbled down.
A man eating puffs.
I was picking up 3 bunches of ramps for $5 when I passed by this man eating cheese puffs.
But it's funny because in some ways there is a little bit of, maybe purity is the wrong word, because these manufactured social media moments, they still can feel genuine in some ways. Like, for example, I can't remember his first name, Davis, that guy on IG who's got 500,000 followers, and he's maybe a little spectrum-y. I don't mean that as an ableist way.
What does that feel like?
Well, I mean, he goes out there and says, I'm locked in for these Excel spreadsheets today. Let's get it, guys. These very to the
make these
point,
scenes. Yeah.
literal, not a trace of sarcasm or really much awareness outside of being like, hey, I am pumped up and I'm going to get on these spreadsheets and you should be too. And it has resonated with people because it's so genuine and kind of funny. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't know where he lies. I don't know if this is, I don't think it's an act though. It doesn't read that way.
Right.
It comes off as genuine, but it's in the same way as a cheese puffs thing. It's like, well, I'm going to do a thing. Mm-hmm. And there is a creative element to it, but then you'll find out, like, turns out it's just cheese puffs doing this. Big Cheese Puff is behind it.
Well, Mr. Beast, probably the most followed dude on all the internet. Like, he's on the spectrum, right? Like, I think openly, he does weird things. He obsesses over a thing, and he creates like a behemoth of a content factory out of it. Like, this is no different than like eating cheese puffs, right?
Sorry, I'm laughing to myself thinking of Mr. Beast getting down on one knee to like a woman, like, will you be my Mrs. Beast?
Why did you turn to Mr. Beast's love life? Who's he? Are you sure it's a woman? Like, you don't want to assume Mr. Beast is into Mrs. Beast.
I don't know, actually.
Maybe it's just true. Beast.
Mr. Beast is my father's name. call me Lyle.
Have you met B-Bomb over here? We are, yeah, we're content creators in life for
looking
life.
For Mrs. Beast.
I mean, he is. I don't know what his net worth would be, but you would imagine Mr. Beast does well on Rhea, right?
I would guess. I think he's beasting.
Wait,
on there.
If you were the Beast Man himself and you were on Rhea, would you use the tag Beast Man, or would you just be like Joe Harris?
Oh, right. I think you got it. Well, it just really shows your first name, which I don't know what his is, so I just say
Beast.
Mr.
It's Beast. It's like, nice to meet you, Beast. It's like, I'm on the spectrum and I create content.
Will you be my Mrs. Beast?
Yeah. For life. Right, there was that article about Tom from MySpace disappearing from the public eye, and he made, I believe, $580 million on the sale of MySpace, and like the site crumbled and he kind of never reappeared. Like, Jack is kind of around still. Obviously Zuck, Bezos, they love to be in the spotlight, but we got a glimpse into Tom's dating life, because immediately after this article was released, under the premise of like, I found him, some women were like, oh, we know where he is, he's on Rhea, like he has not disappeared. I thought that was kind of delightful.
We'll also say that unless you really actively try to take your account down, they'll just keep recycling it over and over and over. Like, I know people who have been on there a long time and like canceled their subscription, but they got it free because they were kind of notable.
Influencer. Right.
And it still just floats around up there indefinitely, like a ghost of singledom past.
Is there an AI? Is there someone stealing? Like, did I DM this to myself, or did Tom send me a D pic?
I guess, I mean, I don't know what Tom is up to, but I do appreciate that he just took his money and left. That's nice.
How much money would it cost for you to leave?
To go
Give
away.
me a number. Give me a number.
Right. Are you basically saying, let's get this GoFundMe up and operative? Like,
Well,
how do we get Ben out of the paint? What's the price tag? Hit me with it.
Someone was beefing this week, being like, why is Kim Kardashian hawking products when she's worth billions of dollars? Can't you just enjoy your money? I'm like, that's not really how it works. People don't get rich by just being like, I'm like a whole person now, and I don't need this frivolous activity. No, this is what they are, right? Like, the number doesn't matter at some point. They just want to like be business people or influencers or drop insane Knicks takes.
I mean, you're right. There are certainly times when I'll see a TV commercial and wonder why someone did it. Like, well, you're incredibly wealthy.
Yeah.
You've done great work, and you're out here doing a Cheese Puffs ad. Is it that Big Puff is really paying you that much money?
No,
or
Puffy.
was that the work that came across your desk and you said, sure, I like shooting commercials. I like working. I like being in front of the camera. So what if it's for Cheese Puffs? They'll pay me some money.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Yeah. Oh, LeBron James he's a billionaire. Why would he want to play in a midseason tournament this hard for $1 million? Like, he wants that $1 million. Like, one of the more famous guys is Seinfeld, right? Like, he made ungodly amounts of money, not only on his show and his stand-up, but also syndication. Like, he is one of the richer entertainers ever in history. They created the Amex Black Card for him. I believe he's number 1. He recently came out today and said some scandalous stuff.
You were telling me about this, and I know that the interns demanded that at 55 minutes we discuss it. Mm-hmm. Can you give me a little context about Jerry Seinfeld's grievances?
He did an interview with Remnick and from the New Yorker, I believe, a podcast, and he was like, comedy will never die. Comedy is a part of our psyche, is a part of our community, culture, whatever. And then he was like, but the reason why these professional comedians are having so much trouble is because of like the woke left mob, and we can't like satirize or comment on current events or ideas. And I think he was like whistling at like the Chappelle debate, but he was like, we cannot introduce these ideas if comedians are like naturally blowhards and they're like, oh, we're not just telling jokes, we're like commenting on the ups and downs of our culture, you know? And he's like, if we can't do that, it's the fault of the libs, which delighted MAGA Nation.
This is a really common complaint from comedians. We've heard this over and over and over. Mm-hmm. You know, this idea that political correctness is the bane of comedy. The problem is that the discussion of political correctness as a bane of comedy goes like back to the 90s.
George Carlin,
and
right?
Andrew Dice Clay.
Dice Man.
I mean, well, that's even further back. You know, that's like the 70s and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But just this idea that, you know, people are too sensitive and you can't say the things you want to say. Like PC culture is not a new phrase, and that's all wokeness is, really, except there's like maybe a racial component to wokeness, but it still is just means like, you know, leftist thought, or however you want to phrase it, in the same way of PC culture. It's like a total rerun in that way. So I wouldn't say that comedy is necessarily imperiled by it. And the people who are usually saying this, the irony of it being Jerry Seinfeld, is that Jerry Seinfeld wasn't edgy at all and had an outrageous amount of success. And he was kind of the straight man on his show. And at least as far as the material that, you know, I've been presented with as someone who has watched every Seinfeld episode, I would never particularly consider him someone who is, you know, endangered by PC culture.
Well, he did it. Him and Larry David did it in a slick way, right? Because there was even just the mention of Nazis is like kind of heavy if you're watching it on a Sunday night at like, or Thursday at like 8:30. It's like, oh, it's a soup Nazi. Oh, we're the Nazi rally at MSG, and it's not just because the Celtics were playing, but it was.
Oh, I mean, they were smart and edgy for TV. I just mean, I don't think their humor, other than them having the fixation with anyone who wasn't white having a funny accent, like that didn't age particularly well.
A lot of it does not age well, like Jerry. Yeah, especially Asian stuff, which I thought was hilarious. But, you know, like those Japanese businessmen who sleep in the drawers. I mean, it's still funny to me, but like, as same as it ever was, you're correct. Like, Yeah, I agree. This has been the no pushback, no comedy, right? George Carlin identified the thing that makes it work. And that is the friction between an idea that comes from him and the pushback of it, and him producing another idea. And then you walk that line. How can you keep the audience interest without eating a tub of cheese balls? And I think Seinfeld is just reverberating that interaction, the thought of that interaction. But he also has a current point, right? And I don't care about like the woke debate, but I do think it's a great era to live in, because like there is a way for people to voice their opinions in new ways, right? That if I wanted to be to reinvigorate the burrito as a main character scene, I could try easier now than I could have when Bobcat Goldthwait was dropping insensitive jokes, or Rodney Dangerfield was being edgy. He's just talking about technology, isn't he?
That's what I was going to say. It feels like a hand-checking debate. Well, back then, there was hand-checking. So the game was better. It was more ethical. You could do certain things. You can't do them today because of pussification. It's
easy. The P-bombification. Thank you.
It's typical declinism, and that's how it always is. Well, today you can't do it because back in the day, it was real. Comedy back then, before the pussification, that was great. Today, the game is different. They're soft. You can't do the stuff that we were doing. It was the real stuff. I'm like, oh, so weird, Jerry. So comedy was good. Let me guess, late '90s. Is that when it was really peaked in your mind? Like right when you were the biggest star on television? That was kind of like when the apex?
Shout out to King Solomon. There was no golden age of comedy because they were always talking about the previous age that they were big in.
I think that you are correct when you say that the decline of comedy, much like the burrito, is the fact that we can get comedy wherever. And stand-up comedy doesn't necessarily translate to digital consumption in the same way that, clips of someone falling off a ladder do, or memes, or the immediacy of it. Because if you watch a clip and like, that's funny, that went kind of viral, you've seen it, you move on. There's a temporal element to comedy, and a spontaneous and almost an unplanned part of it that comedy, when a guy does it on stage, has trouble duplicating.
Yeah, and don't we do this as a tradition endlessly? I remember Hannah Gadsby was like, I am ending comedy here. It is over. I'm telling you how the sausage is made, and after me, how can you tell a joke ever again? I've been laughing since then. Like Stav, our buddy, just put out like such good material, and like there are new comedy specials on Netflix all the time, and I watch them all, and they're all kind of good, bad, great.
I mean, Jacqueline Novak's like Get on Your Knees was kind of a live phenomenon, though.
People, for sure. It was a good idea.
People really went to it. It was like, oh, get a ticket, go see her. It's like more of like a one-woman monologue / play, however you want to phrase it. But I just mean, there's obviously still people who are succeeding as stand-up artists. There just may not be the appetite from the public in the digital sense that there used to be.
Listen, basketball is over. It ended with Michael Jordan. LeBron James can do nothing at this point to make me think otherwise. It ended when I decided I lost my interest.
Did the Sixers season end yesterday?
There's a lot to unpack here, man.
The cookies civil war.
The cookie civil war, right?
The playoffs, as we always bitch about, always be word about, is that it's tough because so much happens between our perfect pods.
By tonight, we will have the Celtics up 3-1 on the Heat. Or not, right?
Or it's tied up, and the Celtics are back on fraud watch. So, as far as the Sixers and Knicks go, did they even play one game the last time had the series
No, they
even
played
started?
2 because we never got to debating if Joel Embiid is a dirty player, and then
No,
another
I know
game
we didn't.
happened.
But I'm saying we might not have gotten any of the games. I think we had one game.
I think we had one.
We definitely didn't get game 2. We definitely didn't get game 3. We definitely didn't get game 4.
Yes, I think that's the way it went. I love how slow the playoffs are, by the way. I know people complain about this. Stretch it out as long as we can because I love watching. So, like, I get impatient for the next game, but I love the fact that it's so long. Enjoy this shit, man. It's cool as hell.
Yeah,
That's
I'm good with that. I just mean as far as the playoffs are a real challenge for the perfect Potters, only because
Yes.
well, if something happens tonight, then what's our conversation about? So we'll just talk about the Cookie Civil War, Knicks Sixers. Yesterday, the Knicks took a commanding, perhaps, 3-1 lead. A lot of stuff to talk about, right? We had the controversial non-calls and the Sixers being mad about it after Game 2.
Crazy.
The Knicks' incredible ending, down 5 points and winning, with not much time on the clock. You had Game 3 with Embiid delivered one of the greatest mad-making performances in history, where my normal, rational Knicks fans became like Blue Lives Matter, trying to deport Joel Embiid. And then we had a really good game yesterday, like classic East Coast basketball, low scoring, and the Knicks were triumphant in Philly, where the Knicks faithful bellowed and yelled Joel Embiid sucks in the Wells Fargo Center. What do you want to talk about, Andrew? There's a lot.
Oh my God. I kind of want, personally, I'd like to revisit one of my first takes, which is Knicks in 3. But also, as soon as if Joel Embiid is healthy, and he showed after he dropped 50 points that he is indeed healthy, certain things snap into place, right? The Sixers, I believe, are a better team in that situation. If Joel Embiid looks like that, goddamn, the Knicks have a challenge in front of them. Not to say that they're going to get beat 100%. That's the better team. That's a team the Bucks didn't want to play. That's a team Cleveland didn't want to play. It's fully formed, even though he's not 100%. And it also clicks into place that the Sixers have to win this, because it's about time Joel Embiid goes a little bit farther in the playoffs. We've talked about this, right? He can't have a first-round exit again. Like, if we care about legacy, if we care about the way he goes into the Hall of Fame, which he will, regardless, he has to beat the Knicks now.
Well, I mean, I don't think that's happening.
Not anymore, right? I thought it was going to be 2-2. I thought they were going to... It was going to go with Game 7. Now I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I doubt it as well. To me, not to belabor a very obvious point, but when it's a close series, competitive series, and you just totally cough up a win, like a quarter of what you needed to advance, like Philly did in Game 2.
Yep.
And I'm not calling them chokers. I just mean if that happens, if you have a game that you win 99% of the time and you figure out a way to lose it in that situation, you're probably going to lose the series.
Yeah, you need that game for sure.
We're like, oh, this series is a coin toss. I'm like, you know what that was? That was the coin toss.
Yeah,
you know how
you lost.
You just blew that. You know, you blew that game. Then you're up 5 with like 30 seconds to go. That's the coin toss.
But it wasn't over then. They had to hold court. They had to take this back to New York for a Game 7. The fact that they lost yesterday, as we're recording, now it's like really tough. And that was a coin flip game within the coin flip, right? At the end, the Knicks pulled away. But, like, the Sixers had the fucking lead. Like, Joel Embiid
I would
flopping in the fourth. Flopping in terms of, like, not doing anything great. The Sixers look bad. I love the Sixers. You know I love the Sixers. And I'm rooting for them because they're your team, even as they're playing the Knicks. But I fucking hate this team, man. It's a joyless squad.
Yeah, I think to me, if you look at the last like 6 halves, and that's just me making an arbitrary measurement here, right? last 6 halves, I would say Philly, in terms of quality of basketball, I don't mean necessarily totally reflected by the lead. You might make an argument that the Sixers have won 4 of those. One of them was a draw. The Knicks have only really won 1, which I'm going to say was the second half of last game. And Philly's lost 2 of those 3 games. So what I'm getting back to is Philly's played pretty well enough to have a lead in this series, or at least be tied up, but they failed in the moments where they have needed to execute. Okay, it's a close game. Figure this out. No, we will not. We'll play pretty good up until now. We'll have a lead in the first half, but it won't be big enough. We'll take the lead late, but we won't hold it. And now it's time to get a key rebound to secure this victory. Yeah, we're not going to do that.
And I'm proud of my Knicks because they're not dumb. So they're doing, I think, in my opinion, playing really good basketball. They're not more talented than Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. But they're close enough where they play smart basketball, twitchy actions. I believe you tweeted about this. And then if Philly implodes, they're there to pick up the pieces. And I'm really proud of them for that. They're well coached. The reaction times are incredible. And they're moving a step faster than Philly are.
Totally. And look, I know Philly's had some injuries. Melton just got back to playing, didn't do much. Covington's out. Embiid's hobbled. Sure. But none of that changes the fact that you're running players out there who are dumb and do silly things.
A few of them are, man. Yeah.
And you're doing this year after year after year.
And not
Denver
dumb,
doesn't
just
have guys,
a little slow. Like a 1 second slow.
But I'm saying you have guys on the court in key moments. I don't mean dumb as far as they're stupid people. I'm saying doing dumb stuff on the court.
Yes.
I'm not saying they're dumb people. They're doing dumb stuff.
Respect to the gods, but yeah.
They're making silly mistakes, and it's been too long. You got to sort this stuff out. You don't look at these teams who are really going to win titles and say, hey, look, they've got Kelly Oubre out there committing 2 silly fouls late in the game. You fouled Josh Hart on a fadeaway as the shot clock went off. What are you doing? You can't do those kind of plays in this situation. You fouled a 3-point shooter by slapping his hand as he released it. You can't do that. And look, he's too handsome a man to stay angry at.
I was going to say, you lost me when you said Oubre because I was like, what a good-looking man.
I'm literally not mad at him. I was like, look, he's so handsome. I'm not going to be salty about Oubre. He's great. But the point remains, really good teams don't have Kelly Oubre on the court late in the game, making silly fouls and bricking threes. He is there to gaze at. He's there to enjoy his presence, his photogenic aura.
Although, shout out
but
to
he
that...
can do that from the bench.
Shout out to that beautiful man, because his defense on Brunson for a couple of games and many possessions have been good just because he's big, he's not slow, and he bothered Brunson for 3 games. Brunson threw up 3 bricks. The 4th game was incredible. One of the great Knicks performances of all time, which is depressing to say.
I'm not even singling that handsome man out, because he actually played pretty well yesterday, scoring wise, which he had not done in prior games. I'm really not singling him out. I'm more talking about those kind of plays.
Listen,
and those stuck out. And
blindingly handsome men stick together, and I will not accept this Oubre slander.
You and Oubre are weirdly sitting in different sections, and it seems yours is more exclusive.
Is that quote Teresi? We know he's not rich, but he's so good looking.
He seems to be in a private dining room that's sequestered.
Yeah, I heard he's here somewhere. Is there a basement?
Didn't even see you.
He's in the kitchen?
I sold him a reservation, but I don't know if he even went.
Andrew, welcome. We got the best seat. Would you like to see the food get made? I'm like, would I? This is the best seat in the house.
But yeah, I can't stay mad at Kelly Oubre. Come on.
No, but we're burying the lead here. Is Philadelphia just another borough of New York?
I would say we're looking at economic colonialism, imperialism,
Colonial
settler
Williamsburg.
mind state
Wow.
going down to Philly. It's a impoverished third world country.
Oh my God! I heard they just the sustenance is just like chipped beef in sandwiches with processed cheese. It's a sad state of affairs at Wells Fargo.
But to be totally honest, though, it's kind of true as far as the economic side. Because if you want to go to a Knicks game in the playoffs, it might cost, let's say, 100s, right? Like pretty good seats. Just as an example, it feels like it's going to cost you $1,200 to get down in the 100s.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. I'm not talking about 8th row. I'm talking about 18th row.
Sure.
Like it might cost you $1,000, maybe more, right? Just to get down there. Mm-hmm. But you look at Philly, you're like, well, we can go down here, do a little day drinking on a Sunday, take the train. You're there in an hour and a half. Same caliber seats for probably $300, maybe $400. And the economic reality is that you can get down there and go to a Knicks playoff game in a way that you just can't here. The price is prohibitive.
There's a lot of excuses for Philly fans not showing up to a playoff game, man. They were there the game before.
Well, it's funny that you have an imperial mind state. Weird how you would come to me with that.
I mean, show up for your team, right? And I was shocked to see that. I was like, I know that Villanova is, maybe people switch jerseys, whatever's Kings, being like, these are some Philly day ones, the Villanova boys, but too many. I mean, hilariously so. No one cares. The Sixers lost the game on the court, but there were many Knicks fans in that arena, inside and outside, and I'm like, every fan base is complicated, and every fan base is wonderful and annoying, but like Philly has. So go ahead.
Here is row 10. Tomorrow's game, potentially
it is
close
not
out.
about the money, man. Like
it is about the money, though. Row 10. This is considered by SeatGeek a 9.1, an amazing deal.
Are
row
there
10, $18.50.
Yeah, but is Philly actually a third world country? Because you took a shot saying that, and that supports your argument that they can't afford these tickets at Wells Fargo, which they have before. But
I was
the
more
reality,
talking about your imperialism.
But the reality of it is there's not that many seats in Wells Fargo, and there's enough money in Philadelphia to fill at least more of those seats than they did on Sunday. We're not talking about every seat.
That may be true. I'm just saying that I'm looking at right now, row 17, potentially the next game this week, $420. Just saying. We're talking about a huge
it's not going to
difference
happen again
in price tags.
Someone's going to Chris Brown this shit and buy them all and give them away to Philly fans. Like, the owner should do it, right?
Yeah, again, I think it's funny to roast Philly for getting overwhelmed by Knicks fans, but as I said, it made so much sense for people who were willing to spend $700 and weren't able to get in the building in New York for that and able to go down there on a Sunday, get hammered, yell a bunch. It made sense that there were teeming hordes of Knicks fans down there. And yet, as I said on Twitter, the worst Long Islander in the building, still on the Sixers.
I mean, I think it's embarrassing. I was like, I'm going to hate the debates that come from this. There should be a few more. We're not talking wholesale, but there should be a few more Sixers fans there. If they got caught sleeping, I don't know if it's a Philadelphia holiday that they were observing, but like we're passing a lot of judgments on who is willing to pay.
I'm saying there were tons of Sixers fans there. Like, what do you mean? There were tons.
There should be more, right?
Because it was. What do you mean? Well, how many Knicks? You don't need that many Knicks fans to be like, hey, they overran the arena. Like, how many people? I don't know what the capacity is. Let's say 18,000. If you have 3,000 Knicks fans, you can have them hoarding up and screaming. And I mean, we did that in Miami one time. I was down there for Art Basel, and the Knicks played, and it was like, whoa, the Knicks fans took this place over. It's like, well, yeah, there was Miami Heat fans,
notoriously terrible fans, right? Like, that comes with that narrative of their arena, famously. But same with Lakers fans. Like, I wouldn't doubt that. But Philly was surprising. But that fan base has been through a lot. And, like, it's enough where Joel Embiid was talking about it. And I was like...
Oh, I mean, Knicks fans, there were a large population, and they were vocal because their team won. I just mean, due to the proximity of the two cities and the fact that Knicks fans are used to spending more money and were willing to do that to get seats, I don't find it like a humiliating moment other than it being humiliating. Does that make
Right.
sense? Like, I'm like, this totally makes sense. It is embarrassing for the Sixers, but it totally makes sense. And it's the same thing that happens when the Knicks play the Nets. Like, oh my God, Nets fans were getting humiliated. I'm like, well, right. There was a bunch of Knicks fans there. There's too many, and it happened in New York too. Remember when the Knicks were bad and the Warriors played there? People said MVP chants for Steph in the Garden. This is mortifying. Like,
That wasn't a playoff game. A crucial
but I just mean
playoff
Golden
game.
State. But I just mean there's a bunch of Golden State fans who bought tickets. Like, it is what it is.
So Nets, Sixers, and Heat fans all the same.
Just
It happened in Wells Fargo. Hey,
mean,
if it can happen to the Nets, it can happen to the Sixers. The Nets don't have fans.
As I said, it's totally worth roasting Wells Fargo for. But also, as I said, it's just unavoidable. If you lose to the Knicks and you're an hour and a half away, and Knicks fans are willing to travel down there and outspend the paupers of Philadelphia, what are you gonna do?
I don't think that happens again for a few years, and that is kind of what I'm saying.
I disagree. I think that happens in Game 6 if Philly doesn't get closed out tomorrow. Knicks fans will go down less because it's a weekday, though.
I think, like we talked about with bottles and models and restaurants, I think the ownership of the Sixers are going to be like, we're going to grab up a bunch of these tickets. Like, we're going to get like maybe a few more than we plan to and make sure. We won't see.
I mean, you could be right. I just don't know how it's that avoidable.
I mean, they were sold on the secondary market, right? Those were season tickets that people sold. Like, Sixers fans put them up for bidding, right? They don't belong. Those weren't like, Celebrity Row. The people who had those tickets sold them.
Yeah, I think so, right? It's
to the highest bidder. Yeah, to your point, the highest bidder is the Knicks fan, but they gave up those seats. Come on, go to those games.
I mean, I agree with that part. That's true. Knicks fans, but like, again, same thing though. It's like if you go on SeatGeek right now, there's a whole bunch of seats for the Knicks game, and
they're going to be bought up by Knicks fans, right? Like, the Knicks fans just want these seats, but like,
but that's what I mean though. It's not like, hey, I can't believe you're giving up your seats. SeatGeek is full of Knicks tickets for sale, hundreds of them. Those are people giving up their seats.
And also, we know those are corporate seats in the Garden. It's a different kind of market in the Garden because it's so expensive. And Wells Fargo's cheaper for sure. Like, I like Wells Fargo. I've been down there.
Are you saying that PD Crack is giving up his luxury box?
Yes, that's exactly. Memphis Bleak is giving up his shit.
The state property
Freeway
Loge.
is not there. This is a Quavo concert, man. I thought it was such a delightful watch for me. I still contend that it was so thrilling because the Sixers are better. That's why there was like people stomping on Sixers logos outside and like chanting. Knicks fans who get at me for being like, well, I thought you said the Sixers were better. I'm like, yeah, that's why we're celebrating. If this was a lesser team, it would just be kind of procedural. This is not procedural. This is a wonderful victory against Joel Embiid.
And as I had mentioned before, like, it won't get appreciated because Philly is almost certainly going to lose this series. It would be very. It's hard to believe they're going to win 3 in a row. They might win 1, might win 2, but it just seems unlikely.
I agree.
It's a 3-1 series, and they had a must-win game. They needed that game yesterday, and they lost it.
The Knicks don't look that good, though. But yeah, I mean,
But still, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row unless you're a lot better than them. And even if Philly is like a little bit better, they aren't in position to do that.
I agree.
But my thing is that Joel Embiid's Game 3 masterpiece was not only a 50 spot, that it may have been the most efficient 50-point game in NBA history in the playoffs. I don't know if it was or not, but it may have been. I mean, 50 points on 13 of 19 from the floor and 19 of 21 from the line. True shooting percentage about 88, 89%. Like, that's got to be up there. as far
Ihart's
as
in
most
prison.
efficient.
He put Ihart in prison. Like, he's an amazing basketball player.
You know, and he also basically humiliated the Knicks with taunting, with dirtiness, with physicality, while dropping a 50 burger on their head. And that is one of the most mad-making performances I've seen, just in general. And it's, they're not going to win the series, so it's going to be just forgotten, and it'll only be brought up in arguments like, yeah, but Joel did have that 50-point game, and that's how we'll think about it. But I have not seen people like my co-host really get mad at a player. And you know how great he is. You like Joe. I was like, Andrew's mad.
Oh,
I've never seen him.
Me
mad.
and Dizza were mocking you
mad.
because you were being Newsmaxy. So we were on a thread, a chat with our boy from Miami, and we were like, "Oh my God!" I said Joel should not get booted from any game, no matter what he does, because this is entertainment. I come to see him. I want the Knicks to beat him. I want him on the floor. But that play versus Mitch, Joel Embiid, like, his brand really depreciated this series, especially if he goes out. He kind of had that weird Bell's palsy thing. He was like kind of crying or covering it up. He does that weird non-basketball play. He doesn't dunk the ball at the end of yesterday's game. He goes up for a weird foul baiting shot. Like, ooh. It's disappointing to see Joel, like, just not being a hammer. He's kind of being like a rubber band.
Well, you were pretty vocal on Twitter.
I was.
About
that was a dirty
how
play.
you thought that.
I think he should have been booted.
I mean, right?
You can't do it.
No, you were doing your little quibble where you were saying over and over that it was a flagrant 2, but you understood.
But you can't
why
do
the
it.
league wouldn't eject him, and you
But do you
understood.
understand? Do you understand why they can't do it?
Well, they can't because it was a flagrant 1, not a flagrant 2. To me, it's a.
Well,
let me
you're a
just say
Sixers fan,
No,
right?
no,
Like,
no.
you got to
Let me say
protect
this.
your guy.
No. Let me say this. Let me make one quick point, even though this is old news at this point. But
Yeah, we got
because the way the playoffs work, every level of ball, right?
Oh God,
The old Greenpoint YMCA to the far corners of the basketball universe, every level. You know that there is such thing as a physical intentional foul that is designed to stop a basket from being made, but isn't done maliciously or to hurt people or dirty. It's to physically stop someone from scoring. If it's point, again, every level, and someone's going in for a layup, uncontested, you're grabbing them by the jersey, you're grabbing them by the arm, you're tackling them, you're doing whatever you can do. You're not trying to hurt them. You are physically stopping them from scoring an easy basket. And when I look at this play, I'm like, that's what he was doing. Mitch was about to score a layup. Joe was trying to prevent him from doing that and send him to the line, where he went and missed both free throws. Both free throws, excuse me. To me, the idea that he was trying to hurt him or it was malicious is a misreading of the situation that was very basketball. Like, it was a basketball play. You have a certain amount of fouls you use to prevent the other team from scoring. And I'll say this, if I'm on the ground and it's point and there's a guy next to me about to make the layup, I'm grabbing his shorts. I'm grabbing their leg. And you get it. That's why Mitch didn't react at all, because he knew that it was a normal play. He gets grabbed all the time because he's the worst foul shooter in the league.
YMCA gods, that was a peaceful protest. That was no foul. He didn't try to take both his hands and do weird things with his feet stuff for the Sixers. What else is new? No kink shaming. But, like, it's Mitch's fault for putting Mitch in that situation.
What do you mean? It is a textbook flagrant one. It's literally a flagrant one by the rules. And then the basketball gods, Andrew, blessed us with a perfect counterexample the next day, where you saw whoever it was on the Suns hit Gobert in the head, wrangle around the shoulders while he was like sprinting down the court, slam him to the ground, and that's a flagrant too. Well, holding someone to prevent them from scoring is not an ejectionable offense. That's just crazy.
That wasn't just a hold where you want someone to land well. He was trying to make him land poorly. That is like stepping under somebody and trying to hurt them.
No.
I don't want to get into this too much.
I know, but this idea of like someone kind of fell and hit the floor, he was literally just stopping him from making a layup. Like, it was the smart move. It was a flagrant, but a flagrant one. I just mean this idea that Mitch fell down. Oh my God, that last end of game 2. I think everyone on the court fell down at some point. They're diving all over the place, pushing each other, toppling. Like, Mitch fell down. I think that's just that we know that he is a fragile lad. So people got upset about it. Anyway, whatever. Old news.
Wow.
Knicks up 3-1. I'm just trying to get my little victories where I can, which is like the refs were right. Like, there's my victory. The refs.
OJ did not murder anybody. It was a peaceful protest.
But for real, I am definitely right. That's all I'm saying.
Someone does not sound definitely right. But let's move on. The Knicks are going to win. Joel Embiid's dirty. Let's do this.
Joel Embiid, dirty, but that was a flagrant one, as the refs wisely determined. Moving along.
The ref.
Love refs.
The ref
Love
nation
refs.
over here. All right.
Finally, the refs came around and made the right call 2 games ago. So your Phoenix Suns.
No point guard all season. No point guard.
Eliminated.
Devin Booker.
Let me make one just detail about the game before we get into it. Game 4, their 4th consecutive loss to Minnesota. You got everything you wanted out of Booker and Durant. Magnificent scoring games. Still took the L. Where do you go from here, Andrew?
Beal has a no trade. There was like nobody. Beal has a no trade, right? So like he is there for the future, unless he decides he wants to go somewhere else. But that's a huge contract that nobody liked except for Phoenix fans. I didn't see anybody, any analyst, anyone on Twitter, or anyone in person being like, yo, the Suns got Beal. That's crazy. Everyone's like, ugh, okay, let's see if that works. But like, I didn't like Beal in Washington because of the cliches of like good player, bad team, stat stuffer, stat pig, all this stuff. Beal is like a nice player, but like not unique in many ways, as we say. Like his prototype is gettable. To pay that price for him was a gamble, and not acquiring a point guard and moving your off-ball scorer to a distributor role, I'm like, still could work because that's a heavy-duty roster with Kevin Durant. Bad matchup against a really big team in the Timberwolves, and even Edwards is kind of a mismatch there. I thought it was closer than a sweep, but I'm not surprised at a sweep.
Yeah, without belaboring the contractual elements, just to get them out there. So Beal, as you said, has a no trade clause. He makes $50.2 million next year, $53.6 the following year, and then it concludes with a player option in 2027 where he makes $57.1 million.
That's a lot of Wells Fargo tickets.
I mean, he could definitely go down there and cheer.
He could be a burrito king. Yeah.
He's also 30 years old, and as he's had a checkered injury history. I don't think that contract, even if he wanted to get traded, is movable in any sense whatsoever. I don't think there's any team on earth, well, not on earth, any team in the NBA who would be willing to absorb that contract at this point.
There's certain players I think of like him, in respect to these gods, right? Like Trae Young is an awesome basketball player. Tobias Harris, on most courts, on your YMCA courts, is an assassin, right? But like these are players like you don't want to overpay, give up too many assets for, because we kind of know like their skill sets aren't uncommon and their track record of success is like complicated at best. And Beal on that team gives the illusion, a new owner. Oh, and we got to talk about that side of it. But like the illusion of a big three, it's like we finally got the big. These dynasties have been built in Golden State, in Miami, with 3 all-stars, and then we found our third. And everyone's like, well, he's not technically Chris Bosh or Draymond Green here. It's Bradley Beal, who's like much better than Jamal Crawford, but not much better than like Delon Wright. Really, he's better, but like Delon Wright can be had for a minimum. That may be a questionable roster construction, and then through Pablo Torre finds out that Isaiah Thomas might be pulling these strings,
which is very funny,
incredible, and might be taking over soon.
So Beal missed 30 games this year. Booker was hurt, didn't miss a ton, but missed, I guess, about 14 games. KD, very healthy for him. They almost won 50 games. They won 49. So they were not a failed team by any means. And you could make the argument that if healthier, that may have been a 55-win team. So you can't really blow that up. You can't say, they're a 55-win team with Durant at the end of his prime, Booker in his prime, Beal technically still kind of in his prime at 30.
He's stuck there. He's their assassin. He's their Tobias, Agent Zero.
He is completely immovable. So at this point, all these guys are under fairly long-term contracts. You kind of have to run it back. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, like what are you going to do? Trade Durant and Beal and do what the Nets did and just be stuck with, trade Booker and Durant and get a bunch of assets and young players and then be around Beal and just hit the reset for the next 7 years? Like,
no. Ishbia wants to compete. So. He wants to be on camera if he has a team in a few years.
So, you looked at that absolute demolition at the hands of Minnesota. It's pretty hard to figure out how Phoenix can switch it up and become better than, say, Minnesota, or better than the Nuggets, but you still do have Booker and Durant. That Beal trade is murderous, though. Murderous.
And everyone kind of called it when they saw it. Does Isaiah Thomas have the dangling chrome burritos to trade Devin Booker? Because he would command a king's ransom on the open market, right?
I'm not even necessarily advocating it because it depends on what they get back.
Right.
But trading Booker or Durant, trading Durant never works.
I would hold Durant because at this point, his return probably isn't worth his value.
But you could get a ton for Booker, and then you're going to be around Beal and Durant.
Oh, that's a gross team. That is a really beige team, right? I love Durant, and he's one of the second best player of all time. But he's getting older, and he's surly, and he doesn't look like he's having fun. Because why would you? Like, he's had like a long, complicated career. Oh, and the new owner wants to make a splash, right? Booker is the one prize that they have. Shout out to Bobo. Are you willing to trade the one thing that makes you interesting?
Right. I mean, I'm looking at some of the Suns numbers, not during the playoffs, but just the regular season. Top 10 in offense, but 9. So good, good, not great.
That's
defense.
Solid. Yeah.
Solid, yeah. Defense 13th. A little bit better than mediocre. They don't take a lot of threes. They don't play particularly fast. They turn the ball over constantly. They're bottom 4 in turnovers. They go to the free throw line a lot. And then defensively they don't create turnovers. They're mediocre at rebounding. Like that checks out, from what we know of this team.
Can you put an Isaiah Hartenstein lipstick on this pig? Can you forage for like the delicious Luke Cornett truffles of the league and kind of like push all those numbers towards like a competitive team?
It's funny when you see someone like Nurkic, right? You're like, he looks pretty good out there. You know,
He's a good defender.
he makes
big.
he takes a three every game. He makes 1 out of 4. He's a good rebounder. He's actually a fairly good passer for a big guy. And it's like, but are we getting too much Nurk? Like, you know what I mean? Where you're like, are we just seeing a lot of Nurk? Shouldn't a big man be a little more invisible in this situation?
Like a zoo. Yeah, but he's always kind of like, he can create his own shot, right? So that's why we kind of see a lot of him. Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson don't really do that, but we see a lot of ball stoppage with Nurk.
It was kind of a similar situation when Kyrie and KD were on the Nets, and everyone's like, Claxton's having his breakout year. I'm like, I know, but we're getting a lot of Claxton for a reason. And then those guys leave, and all of a sudden Claxton is just kind of an irrelevant dude.
Yeah.
It's like, because the attention that was administered to your stars, the ball ends up in Claxton's hands more than it needs to.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, do you think the Nurk is like a reset button that has been hit too many times, too many possessions?
I just feel like them. I don't know, man. It's tough to say because they were a lot better with him on the court. So I don't think Nurk played poorly. I'm a fan. I think he's a pretty good player.
Yeah.
I don't think he's great, but they were good with him on the court. A lot better.
Yeah.
And maybe this is more of a Eubanks issue.
I mean, isn't it always? But Durant came out in his classic Durant way, was beefing about the usage that the Suns carved out for him, putting him in the dunker spot a little bit, putting him in the corner. He said he kind of wanted to be on ball more. Does he have a point?
I mean, I think you had mentioned as soon as we started speaking about the Suns that they didn't have a point guard.
They forgot to get a point guard.
I do think Durant is the best passer on that team. I mean, we know Booker and Beal have some facilitation skills, but they are that's secondary.
Yeah, nothing.
And it's secondary with KD, except KD is a basketball genius in a way that those guys aren't.
For sure. And
like he can dime. He can really dime, even if it's not his natural role. Like he can see the floor and he can dish. And those other guys are good, and they can lead your team in assists if you put them in that primary position. But I don't think they have the same natural passing acumen as KD.
Yeah. I was gonna say that maybe the rule changes kind of hurt Booker's effectiveness because he didn't go to the line as much, but he went to the line the same amount of time. 6.8 last year, 6.7 this year. Shot better from there this year. Took kind of as many shots, 9.9 versus 9.4. As many threes, 6. He shot better. Booker was good this year. His game got better this year. So my instinct watching them would be to say play him off ball, but he was really effective as a ball handler.
I just think they aren't as well constructed as the Timberwolves. They have a lot of redundancies, and that to me is your Beal issue there. I'm not suggesting they'd be better with CP3 because CP3 is really old, but I'd rather have him in that series.
Yeah. I mean, are we overreacting with the Suns stuff? Are they kind of a good team? This is how I feel about the Pistons. Like, the foundation is good there, but it's done in the margins, and Isaiah Thomas has not quite done that. So maybe they can find the pieces sort of like what the Celtics and Knicks do.
I mean, yes. I would say that if you have KD, you have Booker, and with injuries, you still won 49 games. I don't think you need to hit the panic button but losing to the Timberwolves in such dramatic fashion indicates that you've got some work to be done. And thankfully, Isaiah Thomas is there to do it.
The eye bomb. Yeah, and optically it's just really bad because it is Anthony Edwards' moment. And he is demonstrative and delightful and entertaining and young and fun. And that just looks bad when he's like gloating and doing the thrusting in every direction. Like, optically and narratively, what can we do except be like, is this the passing of the torch? Like, no, I think Edwards and Booker are comparable players, but like,
do you think Bradley Beal should have thrust his groin at us more? Like, do you think, him gyrating his crotch in the direction of the crowd could have tilted that series?
Listen, I'm a lo mein guy. You're a burrito guy. Joel Embiid is a foot guy. Bradley Beal has to pick his kink.
If Drew Eubanks, had basically shoved his crotch in our direction, I think that could have nullified the Anthony Edwards crotch thrusts.
Guys, bring it in. We're going to need some thrusting here. Who's it going to be? Eubanks? You want to go thrust at something? It's like, I got you, coach.
Dude, why is David Roddy there?
Roddy, what are you doing? Roddy.
Like, Roddy, get out there and you thrust your crotch at that crowd. You get out there and you make your groin you make your groin felt.
You're not thrusting for yourself. You're thrusting for your teammates. You're thrusting for Arizona, for America.
And this is the problem with the league today. Back in the 90s, every team had a guy whose job was to go out there and enforce with their groin. Mm-hmm. They were out there with one sole purpose: thrusting their crotch. That was it.
You're a dog. Thrust like a dog does.
Now, kids today with their fashion outfits and their three-pointers.
Seinfeld is like, I used to be able to thrust on stage like and have a dialogue. There's no thrusting dialogue anymore.
And that's why Anthony Edwards appeals to the thrust originalists.
Thrustafarians.
No, I mean, look, elimination, that was a thrust win game, and they just came up short.
I hope Thrusted Root opens up for fish at the next Sphere show.
Ooh, you didn't even know how good that one was. Thrusted Root, real gross.
Disgusting. But I got that dog, so put me in, coach.
Another annoying news. The Thunder. Have we turned on them already?
Oh my God. So they've been doing this thing. They win games. So they've been doing this thing where they kind of like mob the interviewer, whether that be their local or national. I believe Ali LaForce like secured the post-game TNT interview. They were going to mob her, but then they saw their local guy and then went to them. And
those pigs.
And those sexist pigs. I mean, maybe, but and then the haters started coming out, being like, "Are these guys annoying? Like, do we hate these guys? Because they're reveling in their youthful energy. They're embracing their youthful energy.
They're rubbing their youthful crotch in our face.
They might as well just thrust." I don't know. Is there a thrust app for our phones watching these post-game interviews?
Boost Mobile. So I don't find the Thunder annoying. What we're seeing there, Andrew, is it's called fear. Fear of the rising Oklahoma City Thunder.
Good.
I saw Kevin Wildes, our buddy from F1 Sports, Fox Sports.
I'm a fan.
He was on Twitter and he was like, "Is there a KD to the Thunder trade that makes sense for Phoenix?" And almost everyone was saying No.
Oh, that's intriguing.
The Thunder should not do it. No, they were saying the Thunder shouldn't do it.
Okay.
And I'm like, no, Phoenix is a team that needs to figure if that would make sense.
Right.
Of course it makes sense for OKC.
Yeah.
It depends on what the price tag is.
I'm enjoying this. Like, Giddey's the first to go, but like Giddey would kind of be the point guard they're missing. One of the probably Asian Jalen Williams would be going. A bunch of those picks. I don't love it.
Yeah, you could do it without that much money because the Thunder have room under the cap. Mm-hmm. So, they could just absorb KD's contract. So they wouldn't actually have to match it either. They wouldn't have to necessarily give up Dort. But yeah, look, I'm saying if it was even if they're like, we're not giving up Giddey, they could give you a zillion picks, a couple young guys, whatever. Let's just say you could get it done.
Okay.
Regardless of the cost, right?
Okay.
Like, of course that would make sense for OKC. He's great. He makes you the
Great
absolute favorite for the next 3 years, and he's like the legend of your franchise. Of course, it makes sense.
I enjoy that.
Why would you not do that? That's why you have this cap space, is to add somebody of that caliber, to try to add one other star from outside of the organization. I think the fact that they're this good without doing that yet is
they might not need to. They
may not need to. They may not need to. It's true, but why wouldn't you?
If that was on the table and you didn't have to get rid of, obviously, Chet, not Asian Jalen Williams and Shea, adding Durant to that concoction is crazy. Imagine playing Chet and Durant.
And you could do it.
I mean, would
they
Phoenix
have the picks?
Do it? Yeah.
Like, hey, here's 9 first rounders. We're not giving you anybody. We're just gonna take them.
And I don't think you would have to give up that much just because of Durant's disposition and age.
Totally. I just mean that would be great, and there are a million reasons for the Thunder to do it, which is let's just go and try to win 3 championships right now, and we are still young. Mm-hmm. So if KD fades into the distance, we're still going to be great for a while. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting proposal, and it would be a cool story. And I just don't know why the Suns would do it because of their current situation.
Maybe they love Usman Jang.
The only thing that's annoying about the Thunder is maybe the commercial with Chet and SGA that's on over and over and over.
Chet, it seems like a dude like myself who's probably on some sort of spectrum, and I think he turns people off that way, like I turn restaurateurs off. But Chet is awkward, isn't he?
I can't tell. I haven't seen enough of him in.
I mean, I don't want to drop that
life.
Accusation. I'm speaking for myself.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You, definitely, totally so, absolutely. Chat, who can say?
But he's dopey, right? He's just throwing up rapisms and 90s kind of signaling, and he dresses flamboyantly. He would catch the eye of a Jordan originalist.
I mean, as we talked about in the book, The Joy of Basketball, he's one of the new whites. Mm-hmm. That's his persona, like Tyler Hero, same kind of deal. Mm-hmm. I think I don't find Chet annoying necessarily. I just don't see much of him. But that commercial with them singing about phone plans is kind of annoying.
Yeah, I don't know. People having fun is inherently annoying because we want them to suffer. And there was Anthony Edwards is the most fun having dude I can think of in the NBA. Star or not, no star. And there's people online being like, well, he has Jordan's mentality and Kobe's work ethic. I'm like, no, he doesn't. He doesn't have any of those. He is a fun-loving guy. He may have a lot of Chet Holmgren in him or vice versa. Let's not do that.
Well, we're just talking about moralizing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we're saying that because I like him as a player, he is virtuous.
Yeah. Because
he must work extremely hard because he entertains me.
Right. I approve.
Yeah. And then as soon as, he comes up short, they say he needs to take something more seriously. He can't just be out there.
He can't smile that much.
he can't be out there thrusting his groin. I mean, he could have been in the gym during that
Working on his thrusting.
While he was thrusting, he
Yeah.
could have gotten a couple foul shots up.
Yeah, I don't know. This Oklahoma City, maybe the root of this OKC hate is the way they built this team. People are still mad at the Sixers this week for the way they built this team. And OKC kind of did the same thing, and people won't call it the procedure, but they built it through losing games on purpose. And I think seeing that many young players is not only threatening, to your point, but also like fraudulent.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about both the OKC rebuild and the process in Philadelphia was that they were about 2.5 years.
Yeah, it was quick.
They were quick and they were extreme. I actually thought OKC's was more brazen than Philly. The way they just like shut down Al Horford. Like Philly didn't really do that. They traded their guys off and played young guys. OKC just shut guys down. Like, yeah, we're done.
Smaller market, and they were drafting like a cyclist, right, or a swimmer. Like,
yeah, and they did it in a way that was even, I thought, more over the top than Philly. But either way, there's not really right or wrong here, in my opinion. They were both short. And it's funny that they get heat for turning their franchise around in this extreme way, but we look at a team like the Kings and say, oh, it's a nice story that they became contenders after being bad and not making the playoffs for 15 years. It's like, well, they're more virtuous because they didn't tank, but they were drafting in the same places as other teams. They just didn't take Luka Doncic.
Oof, brutal. I mean, the Mavs tanked for Luka too. Like, Cuban came out and said it before the draft. He's like, we're losing games for this one guy. But, like, it is the attention that people have that creates the thing, and people are still fixated on the Sixers for doing it the wrong way. Meanwhile, we're seeing, like, the Mavs and the Thunder kind of, like, having their moment with very quick rebuilds.
I mean, it's funny because Golden State tanked brazenly as well.
Of course. Light years ahead.
And they ended up with, Wiseman or whatever? Maybe that, I don't know.
I liked him. I'm surprised. I liked him more than what he turned out to be. I did not like Jahlil Okafor. Wiseman actually fit a modern model, but something happened. I wonder if it was Draymond Green. Something happened where he was drained of his superpowers.
I don't think that was the pick from Minnesota either. I could be wrong. Maybe that was Kuminga, who they got from Minnie. Anyway, Dallas Clippers. Before we exit, I'm looking at the interns. They want us out of here.
It's a tight ship.
Dallas Clippers, despite the Mavs' furious comeback in Game 4, that is now tied up. I think the most fun part about this as a Sixers fan is seeing James Harden thriving. He's had 2 masterful games, and they were the 2 that the Clippers have won. And I actually do enjoy seeing him succeed, but
You're
in
playing
the back
with
of my
fire.
brain,
You're playing with
I'm
fire.
like,
I don't know.
you know what? Maybe they should have just paid that man and kept him.
Oh God! Of course, of course. But like, you're gonna lose this because if he doesn't win a championship, even if he does win a championship, people are gonna be like, "Well, there you go. I was right. He has no dog. He's not. I see no thrusts."
He's threw 4 games, again, 2 of which were master classes in the James Harden bucket getting and distribution. He's averaging 26 and 7 on 50% shooting from 3 and almost 60% from the floor. Absolute gems. His BPM, not that it matters.
I like BPM. Whatever. What is
thumb,
it?
12.
Yeah,
True shooting
that's
percentage.
excellent. Right.
True shooting percentage through 4 games, 73%. Awesome. Yeah, maybe he's a guy that the Sixers could have used when they were scoring 92 points against the Knicks.
You're playing with fire. He might lose this series in an embarrassing way, man. We've been here so many times. I am also a James Harden fan, and it's also it's worth noting that they changed the rules to kind of not in his style of play's favor, and he's still thriving. All he does is adjust and have one or two bad games when it really like when some fans think of postseason failure, it's like Joel Embiid, James Harden. Can you roster them both?
Yeah, that happened.
I mean, brutal losses, like frustrating, right? And James Harden has suffered his teammates getting hurt in big moments throughout his career. He's clearly good enough to win a championship, like without even that doesn't need.
Yeah, I mean, he may not be at this point, but he's still really, really good. And not to go back to the Sixers, just because we talked about that endlessly, I will say that to me, the biggest bummer of this era of Philly basketball has been Tobias Harris on the court for every single big moment for 6 years, not 5, 6. Because remember, they traded for him, then they gave him a 5-year extension, then max contract, then he's been there the entire duration, and it is wild. 6 years of the same guy in every pivotal moment. Look over, there he is, Tobias Harris, and I noticed it his first year when he was there. I said, don't resign this guy. You can go back and find our pods. Do not sign this guy to a max contract, especially, do not, if you let Jimmy walk, don't make this guy your max contract. And they went and did that foolishness. And the fact that Philly hasn't come up with alternatives and had other guys out there that could be on the floor instead of him, hasn't figured out a way to trade him, that to me is the defining part of Embiid's legacy. The fact that they've had a guy who cannot play in high-speed, high-intensity basketball games because he can't process the game fast enough, has been on the court with Joel Embiid every single disappointing moment. Every single one. The same guy has been out there, and it's the same guy who's chewing up a third of the salary cap. And it's sad that Joel's legacy will likely be defined in a certain way because Tobias has been there.
And
Don't love it.
The interns are tapping their clock, being like, now you have to talk an hour about Tobias Harris. But no, I will not be defined by Tobias Harris. And this is where we end our perfect pod.
This pod will not be defined by Tobias Harris. I vow.
Thrusting in the intern's general vicinity direction. I don't know. It's a workplace. Let's keep it. Dog.
Let's keep it cookies Civil War.
Yeah, that's right.
Cookies.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.